bring him in, mate. He's a former Raider, Rooster and Tigers front rower. But to us, he's the man who guided our team through the unprecedented COVID 2020 season. Our 2020 Warriors coach, Todd Payten. Thanks for joining us, Todd.
Thanks,
Yeah,
Todd.
no dramas.
Yeah.
How are we?
Doing really well, thanks.
How are you, mate?
Yeah, good. Flat stick at work, actually. First day we've had all our staff available. So we've got a fair bit of planning to do over the next couple of days before our players arrive on Monday. So, yeah, fair bit of stuff to do.
I guess that move, though, up to North Queensland's not too unfamiliar for you. You've been there before in 2015 as the under-20s coach of the Cowboys and assistant to Greeny during that premiership victory. So I guess that makes the move a little bit more easier.
Yeah, very easy from my end. And particularly with the kids, they just slid straight back into their old school. So it was really heartwarming and pleasing to see how happy they were from the get-go. They've hustled us out the door every morning to get to school, which wasn't that common over the past 12, 18 months. And they hadn't been to school for 20 weeks, to be fair. So they were pretty ready by Thursday, Friday. And everyone's, particularly the kids, they're really, really happy to be here.
That's great. Yeah, that makes it a lot easier. Well, we'll take it back to the start of your playing career, where it all began for you. So you grew up in Temora, which has produced some amazing rugby league talent over the years, and you went to school at Erindale College, and you were signed by the Raiders on a scholarship in 1995. And the following year, you made your first grade debut and made the Australian schoolboys team as well. So what was it like to play first grade as a 17-year-old?
Yeah, it's pretty daunting. I was very lucky. Growing up where I did, it's a small country town with 5,000 people, and we've had a really big impact on the NRL. We've had a lot of first grade players, Trent Barrett, myself, Mark Stimson, Ryan Hinchcliffe, Zach Lomax is playing at the moment. We've got Joe Stimson who's playing at the moment. Josh McCrone. So, there's some handy players to come out of a small town. Where I grew up was any further south is AFL and any further north is rugby league. So they had the best of both worlds there, and really strong community, and big footy and sport was a big part of my life. And got an opportunity to go to Canberra when I was 16, left on my 16th birthday, and fortunate enough to play first grade the next year after, and playing with some of the guys I really looked up to. Still had posters on my wall when I played my first grade debut. So really fortunate. Looking back now, you get to see how lucky you were, and I was probably a little bit cocky and arrogant back then, but really grateful for my time in Canberra.
We had the Carver King Ruben Wiki on last week, and he was describing how unreal it was to play in a Raiders team that was chock full of Origin and Test superstars. You probably arrived there towards the back end of that Green Machine era, but what was it like for you to line up with so many household names at such a young age? Yeah,
I remember my first grade debut was at Western Suburbs against Western Suburbs. I only got my debut because they were going through a heap of injuries at the time and a couple of suspensions. So, I played 2 games of reserve grade. Tim Sheen's had just over the years have just plucked kids out of, from lower grades, and he always would have faith in them, and he did that to me. It was late in the season. I just remember I had to take Friday off school to catch the bus up. We're at the team hotel, and I wouldn't say the wheels are falling off, but they were at a point where they had to win a couple of games to make sure they made the finals. Steve Wilder was asked for the just the playing group to stick around after dinner, and he led the chat. Said, "Look, we've got ourselves into this mess. I know we're short on troops. We're just going to have to dig in, keep fighting for each other." And I just remember in that meeting, just looking around the room thinking, whoa, I shouldn't be here. So, so Laurie Daly, Noah Nadruki played, Ruben played, John Lomax, they're the type of guys, Quinton Ponga, they're internationals, Ricky and Brad Clyde, another couple of guys that were playing. So I was awestruck for the first 6 months. I loved turning up to training. Really was just a young kid enjoying his time, and it was really, really enjoyable time.
Yeah, it definitely must have been surreal. Well, yeah, you were released by the Raiders and played one season with the Roosters in 2003, and then you signed with the West Tigers, and being part of the inaugural premiership in 2005. Mm-hmm. So what are your memories of that grand final experience? And a sub question to that from my good mate Brad Weir, who's a massive Tigers fan. He'd like to know what it was like to score the match-winning try, or to steal the match-winning try.
So it's not that well known, but I had an injury cloud going into that game. So I actually tore my tricep with the second last round. So I missed the last round, the first semi-final. And it just got to a point, the doctor was pretty sure that, if we could strap it up tight enough and needle the hell out of it, I should be able to get through some games. So we held off the surgery, did that. Anyway, week of the grand final, I strained my hamstring on the Tuesday, just doing a conditioning drill right at the back end of the session. I felt it go. I thought, shit, surely not. So I tried to keep going on the next one. It grabbed again. I just walked up to the trainer and said, look, I think I've done the hemi. We walked off. So for me, that week was, there was so much going on. It was such a blur. I spent, the week in a hyperbaric chamber getting physio treatment. I was unsure whether I was going to play. I was in my own head, just working out, 1 hour it would feel good. I'd be thinking, yep, I'm right to go. And then the next hour would throb and ache, and, I think, oh, shit, I can't go. I'm going to let my teammates down. So I was really lucky that Tim and I had a pretty good relationship. He put a fair bit of trust in me. I was pretty experienced too at the time, so I kind of understood my body. And he said, look, if you can get through the captain's run, I'll leave the decision up to you. So we got to the captain's run. I strapped the hell out of it so tight. I was probably in second gear for the whole session. I got through it. And then, he looked after me through the game. He didn't play me a lot. I only played 30 minutes, I think. And I was just really lucky to get on a try. And I thought that just, really wrapped up a really difficult week. If I look back on it, I can't remember the week as such. As, like I said, I was just inside my head for the whole duration. I can remember the party though.
I bet you can.
Was the old Tigers Leagues Club still open back then?
Yeah, so what happened after the game, we had, of course, we're the two merged clubs. We've got 3 leagues clubs. So there's one at West Ashfield, which is kind of halfway between Homebush and the city. So we stopped there first. We didn't leave the ground until 12:30. So we got back to that club about 1 o'clock. We had a couple of drinks and a bite to eat just with the team. So that was a pretty good little moment. We went back to the Leagues Club on the top of Victoria Road, just in Balmain. And there was 10,000 people. They blocked off Victoria Road, the main arterial road in Sydney. 10,000 supporters there, and we were on the balcony there and popping champagne and carrying on like lunatics. We carried on through the night and had to get on a bus the next morning at 8 o'clock to head out to Campbelltown, which is a good 45 minutes to an hour away. And the club wouldn't allow us to keep drinking. So, most of the guys sobered up, and, that Monday morning was a bit tough. And then, went back to Leichhardt Oval and had another fan day. So it was a pretty long and continuous few hours. Had got a bit of sleep on the Monday night. Ended up going back to a pub in Balmain to catch up with the rest of the lads. We just sat around and played cards and carried on.
My housemate is a mad Tigers supporter.
Yep.
You stick your head in and say hi.
Toddy.
Hey, mate. How are you? Yeah, good on you.
Very much. I was going to say without a grand final, I've got one.
That's all I hear about is that wonderful day in 2005. Because being Warriors supporters, we haven't experienced a winning grand final, mate. So
yeah, I shout out to my good mate again, Brad Weir as well. He's a massive Tigers fan, and he often refers to you as the big hombre, icing the grand final. So
was
half back in a front rower's body as well.
Yeah, who said that? Who described him as that?
Phil Gould, I think, often used to say he's a halfback trapped in a front rower's body about you when you were playing for the Tigers.
Yep. Yeah, that was pretty common. Like I said, I had Tim Sheens, and he was a coach that, you know, promoted his guys to class and use the footy. I think he changed the way the game played a couple of times throughout his coaching career, and I know he was good for me. He didn't pigeonhole me in terms of, mate, you got to truck it forward, play the ball as quick as you can, which is part of my role. But he also understood that, you know, I could pass the ball and I was a different point of attack. You know, the first point of attack was always out of dummy half with Robbie Farah, you know, and then it'd go to Benj or Princey, and then, you know, I could link between those three and out the back to Hodjo. So we had some different points of attack, and like I said, like Sheensy was really good for me as a footy player, and probably has the biggest influence on the way that I like to coach.
You hung the boots up in 2011 and transitioned pretty much straight into coaching with immediate success, coaching the Tigers 20s to the premiership in the NYC that year. Had you always intended to move straight into coaching after your playing career?
It wasn't something that I really thought about until I got to the age of 26, 27. I guess I always thought a little bit differently about my footy. Like to watch how other teams did things, how you could potentially pull teams apart. You know, I've been in discussion a lot with Hodjo, was a similar type of player. He thought about his footy. That's Brett Hodgson. Robbie Farah, the same. So, yeah, once I started to think about what I was going to do post-footy, it really was clear for me to see that I wanted to get into coaching. And like I said before around Tim, he knew my ambitions and he really encouraged it. And I did some pathway stuff while I was playing at the Tigers with their Cub squads. You know, it wasn't a great deal, but, you know, I was very fortunate that Tim gave me a shot straight as an under-20s coach, which I understand that was further up the food chain than most guys get to start out at. And I was really grateful for that. And yeah, we had some success, had a reasonably strong team. We finished 4th in the regular season, but we just got the timing right in the belief, and we strung the last 5 or 6 games together and knocked over a couple of better sides on the way through to the grand final win.
And Canberra in the grand final too, who were the red hot favourites that year too.
Yeah, they had Anthony Milford, Edric Lee, Branko Lee, Patrick Magos played some first grade, Michael Cheekham. So they had a pretty strong side. Shannon Boyd up front. So, you know, our side was pretty strong too. We had Marika Korobetti on the wing. We had David Nofaluma on the other wing. We had Sawaso Sues played some first grade. Yeah, the difference between us and the other team, we're probably a little bit more mature across the park in terms of body shape and size. So that really was important at that age level.
Yeah. Well, in 2014, you were named as Mick Potter's assistant at the Tigers.
Yeah.
Did you throw your hat in the ring for the top job in 2015? And
yes, I was interviewed. Yep. But the other assistant, Dave Kidwell, was interviewed as well. I think there was a couple of others. You know, yeah, looking back, you know, that was the wrong thing to do. I should have just been more patient. You know, I wasn't ready, and I'm grateful that I didn't get that opportunity. So, you know, I went to Townsville. I was 3 or 4 weeks I was without a job, so I had to take a step backwards and coach 20s primarily, and I was an assistant to the NRL side on a small scale. In those 4 years there, I learned a lot about about coaching, about myself, about putting together a good program. So yeah, it was a really good move. Really happy that it worked out that way, looking back in hindsight.
Yeah. We'll fast forward to 2018. You replaced your old teammate, Cappy McFadden, as assistant coach at the Warriors. How did the move to the Warriors come about?
Yeah, it was just getting some, 4 years at the Cowboys. I just thought it was the right time for me to grow and try and test myself in a new environment. As a coach, you always need to learn. I think I was just at that right time just to try and do something different. I had a talk with, had a couple of talks with Canberra at the time, and not that I got the choice in the end, but I knew deep down that if I had gone to Canberra, it would have been for the wrong reasons. It would have been to, my wife's family down there, my mother's down there, but this was more professional decision to go across to New Zealand, and different experience for the wife and kids as well. And in the end, that happened quicker than the Canberra thing was bobbing away. So yeah, committed to Warriors, and yeah, had a great time in New Zealand. And we're only there for 14 months. We spent the last 5-6 months in Australia. So I look back at my time in Auckland in particular, and particularly at the Warriors, yeah, really enjoyed it. I was thriving myself, my family, we were all happy together. Auckland's a great town. The club's full of good people. That playing group, I'll always hold them close to my heart. Yeah, it's a great time.
Yeah, well, it's awesome to hear that. Yeah, we'll fast forward to the 2020 season, and we went into 2020 with what many people considered to be a subpar roster, and not really any major off-season signings other than Wade Egan. So the preseason didn't start too well either, with the Nines competition probably not going to plan, and then no joy in the trial matches as well. So how confident were the boys heading into the start of the season?
Yeah, it's a difficult one because we didn't put any emphasis on the Nines. At the end of the day, the coaching staff and Steve will be judged on what happens in the NRL premiership. So, we got whacked. We put some kids. We had, pretty top heavy in terms of forwards and a 9 squad, and we got found out. We tried to evolve and change the way that we played in the 13-a-side version of what we were doing. We knew that we'd had to take time and a bit of pain for it to get where we wanted to get to, and in the end, it wasn't quite working. The competition split up again, and then obviously we met as coaches and the players, and we just peeled it back a little bit to the way that we were playing beforehand. We wanted to play with a bit more width from dummy half, and it wasn't always, you had to kind of rely on good conditions to play that style of footy, and you weren't always going to get that in Auckland, even though we didn't play there a lot. It just, we just went back to, I guess, similar to the way we were playing the year before. And we were 0-2 come season breakup after round 2.
Yeah, well, I think it's fair to say that 2020 didn't go to plan for anybody.
No.
That round 1 match at Newcastle, I remember that. I was up there for that.
Yep.
And I think you remember my mate Josh Gage got to chat to the boys before the game.
Yep.
I think that game will be more remembered for what was happening off the field than what was happening live during the game. I know Cameron George was fielding phone calls back and forth with New Zealand, and that decision to keep the competition afloat literally meant that the Warriors stayed in Australia with pretty much the shirts on their back.
Yeah.
And the boys would have found that out after coming off that 20-0 beating by Canberra Newcastle in those shit conditions.
Yeah.
What was the feeling of the group at that time, like learning that they were going to be here? At that stage, they thought indefinitely.
Yep. So we had always intended to get on the bus and fly home the following day. So we were going to bus to Sydney and then fly home back to Auckland the following day. We had a couple of the executives from the NRL turn up to the hotel. We got told in the sheds after the game what the possibility that could happen once we got to the hotel. You know, it was a pretty big decision what the players had to do, and they wanted a decision quickly. The lads committed to 2 weeks, about staying in Australia for 2 weeks, and reassessing after that. I was pretty adamant that the players were going to go home after that fortnight period. In that little time frame, obviously everyone kind of understood that, you know, if we did go home, the season would fall over, you know, players wouldn't get paid. And, you know, they dug in, and in the end, the COVID spread too much and the decision was made for us. But it was a crazy time. Things are changing from 1 hour to the next. The uncertainty of it all was probably the hardest part. And, you know, we had a job to do and it was difficult.
Yeah, well, the competition after that went into hiatus, as you said before, after the round 2 game against Canberra on the Gold Coast. And most of the squad returned to New Zealand and went into lockdown. Can you give us a bit of an insight as to sort of what happened with the players and the coaching staff over this time?
Yep. So, yeah, we're in lockdown. So we did a lot of these type things. We had Zoom meetings almost daily. We had to put a lot of faith and trust in the players that they would hold their end of the bargain up and stay fit as they could, do as much training as they could on their own, which is, you know, really difficult. We were in a stage 4 lockdown. You know, the Australian clubs had a clear advantage on us at that time. We spent 7 weeks apart. You guys are in the same boat as we were. From a family point of view, it was good to slow down and have a bit of time with our families, but from a professional point of view, it was really hard. You know, from where we were 0-2, trying to get the improvements out of our footy team, I just knew we were just going to have to start a little bit behind everyone else, which wasn't a comfortable feeling at all.
Yeah, because I think New Zealand dealt with the pandemic completely differently to Australia, because you guys were in total lockdown. We still had some, you know, we were still able to do some things, and I don't know what the other NRL clubs were doing. And the announcements made to resume the competition and a date was set. I don't think anyone really understands the magnitude of that decision for our players. Can you describe again what it's like with the players now having to say goodbye to their families for another unspecified time frame?
Yep. Again, it was the uncertainty around what we're walking into. You know, the chat amongst the group and amongst the coaches that, you know, possibly 8 to 10 weeks. Our families would join us once the season started, and then once things cooled down, we'd be able to come back and resume as normal as possible. When the outbreak in Melbourne happened, I think that's when it really bit of clarity around what was going to happen. We obviously knew that we were going to have to stick out the season, and that first few week period, I thought our setup in Tamworth was probably the best situation we could find ourselves in terms of improving as a team. We had a great setup at the West Leagues Club there. The training paddock was 50 metres across the car park. They set up a gym. So, and we were well looked after by the staff there. It was terrific. You know, it was the first time, you know, I've seen our guys start to talk footy and just hang around each other a lot. In Auckland, with the time difference, you don't get to watch a lot of footy live, and our guys, you know, I think being a rugby league player, I know when I grew up, I watched a lot of footy, but, you know, players nowadays don't do a lot of it. And I just saw our combinations grow at that time, even though we weren't really playing. It was, you know, we couldn't do anything else. So, you know, other than play cards, bit of Xbox, the players would get across to the park, training paddock, you know, when they got a few hours off and kick the footy around, you know, mucking around, playing some touch, you know, talking plays, talking field positions, you know, all those little things that make a good footy team tick. And yeah, like I said, that 2 week period was invaluable for us for what we're rolling into in terms of the season.
Yeah, no, the town really seemed to embrace you guys, and obviously had the postcode there on the jerseys and everything. So it seemed like a great experience for all, and the big haka that you guys gave, the players gave for farewell, is one of the most memorable moments of the season too.
Yep. Strange because we didn't see one bit of the town. We were locked away in the, there was a big fence around the whole compound. But the staff there, we were only there for 3.5 weeks, but we got to know them quite well. And they were sad to see us go. And when we went back there to play the Knights, they were really grateful for what we were able to do for them in terms of coming back and putting a bit back into the town. And that was our own little way to repay what they did, because they had to make a pretty quick decision around taking us into their community. I know it wasn't welcomed by all parts of the community, even though New Zealand was cleaner in the COVID states, but the perception around bringing us into their town, wasn't well met in some areas. So, we were very grateful for what they were able to do for us, quick notice, short notice, and we just tried to, put on a good performance in that game against the Knights, which we did.
Yeah, absolutely, it did. When the competition resumed, we had a couple of wins. There was a Dragons win, and I think we beat the Cowboys. But we had those two big losses to Penrith and then South, which seemed to overshadow and ultimately lead to SK's sacking. I don't know if you can talk about this, but how blindsided was the group, and what was your reaction amongst the players when this news came through?
Yep, it was a complete shock to everyone. I got a phone. Myself personally, I got a phone call 8 o'clock the day after that game against South. I'm pretty sure it was South.
South,
yeah. Cameron told me what the club had made a decision, and he wanted to know whether I would take on the role, and they wanted an answer pretty quick. I felt sick in the stomach, for Steve and for our group. I needed some time. Straight away, I went looking for Steve, and coincidentally and fortunately that he had his wife Piri down at, from the night before. I walked up into Steve, Stacey and Tony's room and asked where Mooks was, and they could just tell. I'm talking Tony and Stacey could just tell by the look on my face that something wasn't right. And they just asked me what was wrong, and I had to tell them. Went and found Mooks. He was pretty upset, understandably, and the group was frustrated and upset at best, and some ways a lot of them were angry, and which is understandable. They were blindsided. We're in the midst of trying to dig ourselves out of where we were, and just felt a little bit isolated, I guess, and it was a tough 24 to 48 hours for everyone.
Yeah, we spoke to Jazz 2 weeks ago and kind of asked him the same kind of question, and he didn't mince his words. He didn't hold back on what he had to say about it. But it was just one of those things, because as fans, we were totally blindsided. It was
absolutely,
and it seemed odd. The timing seemed odd considering what the team was going through. And I mean, we're not privy to what goes on back behind closed doors and in head office and that, but just with everything that was going on, it just seemed like a really odd timing. Hindsight will probably tell us it probably worked out a little bit better than what everyone thought it would, but at the time, just a bit weird.
Yeah, I know the players felt angry. They felt angry that the decision was being made by people that weren't actually living and breathing what we're trying to do. So, they just felt a little bit let down in that regard. I know Tony and Stace, mate, they were really pissed about Steve and the way he'd been treated, first and foremost. One of the reasons why I really liked working with those guys is the amount of trust and belief they had in each other. And first and foremost, they were friends, and they've been friends for a long time. And I could feel that and see that. That's why I liked working with them. they could say what they wanted and they wouldn't offend anyone. No one felt threatened by anything. So I just really enjoyed that work environment with those four in particular. And understandably, those two guys I've just mentioned, Stace and Tony, they were really pissed, and it took Tony a few days extra than Stace to get over it. So yeah, it was a tough time.
Yeah, well, you were then appointed as interim coach. So tell us a bit more about the immediate challenges that you faced after this appointment.
Yep. So I must have played on Friday night, but so I gave the boys, a good 48 hours just to process what was happening and decompress in some way. We met on Sunday night, I'm pretty sure, around 5 o'clock. We didn't do any review. We just sat in a round circle, all the staff, all the players. I said, look, guys, what is done is done. We can't really control that. And I'm really upset that Steve's had to go through it. But, here's your chance to share how you're feeling. Say what's on your chest. Once we get it out in the open, I just need a commitment that if you're going to stay, we're going to dig in and get on with it. I'm also giving you guys a chance. If you don't want to stay, you have 6 o'clock until 6 o'clock tonight to come and knock on my door, and I'm not going to stand in your way. I understand completely where you're coming from. If you want to go home, you can go home. So that's, we had a few guys, really express how disappointed and angry and frustrated and hurt they were about it all. And in the end, I was sitting in my room, 6 o'clock ticked over, I thought, sweet, we're home. Everyone's on board. And then 6:05, I get a knock on the door, and we had a couple of guys tell us that, they wanted to go home for different reasons, which is understandable. And, we worked out an arrangement for them to go home, asked that they can just commit for 2 weeks. And then once that date, there's a few things floating about as well. So we hadn't got official confirmation that they could bring the families over. We're just waiting for the, what's the exemption? It's called the exemption to get okayed. And if we hadn't heard by that date, they could get on the plane the next day. And that was 2 weeks' time. Nothing come about. And in the end, they end up leaving.
That your first game in charge was that Melbourne game.
Mm-hmm.
Probably one of the most memorable things for us as fans was your press conference after that game.
Yep.
It was refreshing to hear a coach speak honestly about his expectations of the team, his appraisal of the game, and that's something as Warriors fans, and no disrespect to other Warriors coaches, but that's something as Warriors fans we've never experienced before. It's kind of become accepted that poor performances are part of the Warriors culture, and therefore, the coaches in their press conference haven't been as scathing as what you were. And I think that was the moment that a lot of us sat up and thought, this guy's the real deal for this job. And as you said, it was well reported there was some unrest amongst the playing group. And we all know that Ken, Fust, Ignatius, Pulu and Yayawa went home. I think that was after the Cronulla game.
Yeah.
Was there any others that were close to leaving that you knew of?
No, not that I knew personally. I know there's some different guys struggling at different times throughout the course of the year, which is completely understandable. All our young kids, I don't think they've spent that much time away from home. I really felt for Rog. I know it was well documented that Rog was the only player that didn't have his family there, and his kids were young. He left when his youngest was 6 months old and got home when, just before his first birthday. So there's a lot of changes in that time. All the staff, apart from myself, my family come over after, 5 months. We had 5 months apart, but the rest of the staff, they didn't have any family there. So everyone did a tough at different times. But in saying that, there's a lot of positives to come out of it. Like we come together so well as a team, I know that's purely for the fact that we were actually living together for 5 months in an apartment. It was kind of like Melrose Place. I don't know if you ever watched that show years ago, but that's exactly what it was like. The young guys looking after each other. They'd share cooking duties from apartment to apartment. The families that were there. I saw our boys and how good of fathers they were, and that was really good to watch. And the families that were there were having a good time together. And I just saw the connection and the belief grow in the group. So as hard as it was, there were so many good parts about it. I really enjoyed our time together at Terrigal.
Yeah.
Who did the food shopping?
Sorry?
Who did the food shopping? Did they have to do their own food shopping?
Yeah, so we had a chef there, and he cooked for us day before the game and day of the game, and then everything around that. The players wanted a bit of normality and they wanted to cook themselves. So we had an allowance, and they would go and get the food and do it as if we were at home. So, there was some good stuff there.
Yeah. Just back to the players and some of them leaving, obviously. Did the club have a contingency plan if, say, half the team did decide to leave?
No. Not as such. We'd always been given permission by the NRL to get loan players, but I reckon that would have been stretched if we had to get 10 or so players. Our guys were really good that stayed here, and the guys that went home, they had some real reasons to go home. So there was no real resentment or discouragement from the players' point of view or the coaching staff point of view, or even from the club, So everyone completely understood everyone else's situation. So the guys that stayed behind, they just got on with it and did really well. Played some really good footy at times.
You mentioned the loan players before, and that's something that's been tossed around for a while prior to 2020, but became a very real thing this season. How did that first come about with Powesa Famuseli coming to the club as the first loan player? And was it as easy to get these guys to come as we thought it was going to be as fans?
So I guess the difficult part was that we had to absorb the cost of it, through our club. So it wasn't cheap. Players that were on loan to us obviously weren't getting a game, so there's benefits to go to both parties. Each player that come into our system, they just dive straight into it. It was a lot of information, meeting a lot of new people, play calls, field position, sets, all that sort of stuff. So, the information overload for the first couple of days would have been a bit of an eye-opener. I thought our coaches handled that really well with delivering that to each player. And then the guys, they just come in and they were great. They were really great. They weren't shy. The only kid I thought, was probably Albert Hopewadi as an 18-year-old kid. He was a little bit younger and probably hadn't been exposed to that so much, but the more experienced guys, the two Parramatta boys, they were first class. I thought Hedrow, he just, he was really good for the group. He probably showed our guys a different way to play footy and a different way to train, and the guys around him just felt taller and tougher. So there was, it wasn't as hard as some people were suggesting. At the end of the day, it was all footy. The boys just wanted to play. Just the information was probably the more difficult part.
Yeah, well, all those guys, like you said, played awesome for us. They'll all be fondly remembered for a long time by all Warriors fans. Was it a condition of the loan player agreement that the loan players had to be in the game day 17? No. A couple of them, we had a conversation with the club itself. If they were going to be loaned, then they wanted to play. And then with Albert, we couldn't make
him that promise, but where we were from a group point of view and injuries and all that sort of stuff, they had to play. So to answer your question, there wasn't an out-and-out agreement that they had to play, but where we were, it just worked out that way.
We had a fan poll, and I think most Warriors supporters loved George Jennings in a Warriors jersey. Who was the one that impressed you the most? That bought into pretty much everything that you guys were doing?
Yeah, I thought Dan Alvaro did a really good job. I know George played some really good footy and scored some good tries. George is a quieter kid, where Dan's probably a little bit more senior and been around and played some more first grade games. And he spoke really well in a lot of our meetings. So in terms of sliding straight into the group, he felt right at home from the start. I know he really enjoyed his time with us. He didn't get a great deal of game time, but thought he added some real value, some leadership, and some really good traits on the training park. So if I had to point out one guy, it was probably him, because it just purely demeanour and energy around the group, and it was infectious.
Yeah, we'll just throw back to your first NRL game in charge against Melbourne, and the team started pretty well in that game, but ultimately ended up with a 50-point shellacking.
Yeah.
What do you remember most about your first game day experience as a head coach in the NRL?
I remember the score line.
Don't we all?
Yeah. It was a strange one, because we competed really hard for the first 20 minutes. We should have scored a couple of tries, and then they go down and score a try pretty much full length of the field against the run of play. And that's when I thought we really struggled, and I wasn't happy with the effort from certain players in moments at the game. And that's what I made really clear in my post-match address to the players. If we're going to be here, we've got to put in an effort that you're proud of, that everyone back home is proud of. So I just try to make it more about, not about themselves, and more about who we're representing and why we're there. And that took a couple of weeks. But in the end, I thought that message got through, and they were working really hard for their teammate beside them, because that's what footy's about. Like you just need to, when things get tough, you just need to keep turning up for the bloke next year.
The Roosters game was a real turning point for our season, I thought. Despite losing the match on the scoreboard, we won back some respect. Pretty tough performance. Jack Hetherington not backing down to JWH, and then watching JWH have a bit of a sook after the game was pretty memorable. Do you look back on that game, on that match, as being pivotal for the change in attitude, which pretty much became synonymous with our every other performance for the remainder of the season, showing that resilience and that mental toughness? Yeah,
I thought, I agree with you. Probably the Broncos game, I reckon if we had lost that game, it would have made it for a real long season. But I think we got behind in that game by 10 points. We fought our way back, and I reckon that was probably the point where we started to believe a little bit, kind of understood how important it is just to put the effort in continuously for, play after play, set after set. And then when things get tough, you can rely on the guy next to you. So, through talk and effort. And I thought that was probably not necessarily the turning point, but just the ignition that, that belief was starting to grow. If we had lost that game, I don't know how the season would have panned out. But, that, I can't remember who we played after that, but there was 2 or 3 games.
The Titans on the Gold Coast. I was just going to ask, because that was a pretty a good lesson afterwards about how things can change in 1 week, I suppose.
Yeah. And there was the Cronulla game, which was the game just before the boys went home.
Yeah. So the Titans game was a missed opportunity in my eyes. I know we got out to a 12-point lead. There was some things in that game that went against us, and we didn't handle that really well. The Hetherington disallowed try, you know, that would have been 18-0. There was a penalty in front of the post at that point, which should have been given, and the referees told us through the week that that was wrong, along with the Hetherington try. So that would have been 20-0.
Yeah. Different story.
And then there was a penalty right at the death of the game where Pet Hiku got penalised for an escort penalty, and they scored off the back of that penalty where Blake tried to knock the ball dead. And that ruling again was expressed to me by the referee's boss as being wrong, and it was really heartbreaking. You know, three big calls that didn't go our way has an immediate effect on the result. And yeah, you know, it was a game we should have won, and you know, it come back to bite us in the back end of the season.
Yeah, well, after the loss to the Roosters, like as Mark said before, we played really well. We got back-to-back wins against the Tigers and Manly, and we really looked to be getting on a roll. It was around that time, though, that there was speculation that you might be offered the head coaching role full-time, but that you famously turned that down live on NRL 360. So we're all shocked, but you clearly had a pretty good idea of what you wanted. Particularly, you know, with the family health issues that you said, and possibly due to the conditions of the contract offer. How did the squad respond to your decision to not accept the head coaching role?
Yeah, it was a strange few hours. So I'll fill you in on how it all happened. So I'd been offered the job. Made a decision to turn it down based on, you know, obviously reassessing things around the family situation, and the COVID thing just highlighted how important it was. My father-in-law has had chemo and had an operation since, so he's doing really well, but that was weighing on my mind. I'd agreed to do an interview on 360, and undertook that interview. They were asking me if I was to be the Warriors coach, what would be different, you know, all that sort of stuff. And I did the interview. It was a pre-record based on the fact that, you know, I was still in the mix to be the Warriors coach. I got off the phone call, just didn't sit right with me. You know, I've been into my players about honesty, been into my players, you know, about other different things, and how could I say that but not act that? So I rang the guys back up on 360, did a live cross, and that's how it panned out. So yeah, it was a strange couple of hours. From there, our boys were having a team dinner, walked straight in there and just addressed them, and I think by the time I got there, it'd been out on Twitter, so you know, a couple of the guys knew, but they were pretty good. I explained completely why and how it evolved, and you know, I'm sure a couple of the guys weren't happy, but you know, in the end, they understood why.
I'm going to ask you a question. You don't have to answer. You can just plead the fifth on this one. But we in Fanland heard that they'd offer you a 1-year deal. To take on the head coaching role. If that was true, do you think had they waited 2 or 3 more weeks, they would have offered you a longer deal, seeing the success that you were having with the squad? Or was the 1-year deal the only thing that they were going to offer because you're a coach, so to speak?
No, that's completely wrong. I was offered a 3-year contract.
Okay, cool.
Because
they were the reports we're getting from different news media here in Australia. So, I'm glad
no, completely wrong. It was a 3-year contract. There's nothing. That was, I don't know where that's come from, but that's completely untrue. It was a 3-year contract, and it wasn't an easy decision because it's something that I'd been working towards for a long time now. 9 years as a professional coach, to have it right in front of you and to not take it wasn't an easy thing to do. I had a lot of sleepless nights knowing that, in the end I could end up with nothing, and I would be coming back to Australia almost looking to become an assistant, and those opportunities were drying up week by week as well. So it wasn't easy.
If you hadn't have got the Cowboys job, though, you still had a year to run on your contract.
Yeah.
Didn't you?
Yeah, I did. I had another 12 months. In the end, if I didn't have a job, I would have attempted to stay, but I don't know if it would have worked out that way. In some ways, it's probably almost untenable between myself and the Warriors, and I understood that. But as it worked out, things, we're very fortunate.
Yeah, well, we really appreciate your honesty there and for clearing that up. But regardless of the news about you not taking on the head role, you were able to keep the team to task and performing consistently at a high level as well. So how did you go about achieving this despite everything going on in the background,
Yep. Look, I thought all our staff did a tremendous job. Tony and Stacey, shuffled the decks there, so they went to our attack. I moved over from attack to defence with Justin Morgan. A guy called James Duran, who does all our wrestling stuff. We put, we almost give him free rein, and we just gave our players constant individual feedback, which I thought the more that we gave them, the more they wanted. So that was a good lesson for me as a coach. We try to simplify things a lot in the way that we attacked. We're playing more direct, and we're enjoying what we're doing, like turning up every day to work, enjoying it. I know winning helps, but the spirit and, the enthusiasm, the way that our staff took it on, it was infectious. And then, players were smiling, they were happy, and we played some tremendous footy there, and we scored some great tries, and we competed our asses off. I know in that Penrith game it was really wet, and they had a bucket load more ball than us, and they only rolled us by 8 points. I think they had something like 10, 11 more sets. Yeah. And, I know we lost that game. It was probably one of the more proud I've been as a coach during that whole season, just the way that we hung in there and we never turned it in.
Yeah. You made no secret of the fact that RTS was feeling the effects of not having his family with him. What were your conversations with him like? Because for us on the outside looking in, there was no deviation in his performances on or off the field.
Yep.
He's showed tremendous character throughout the whole ordeal.
Yep. I thought he led our club terrifically well. He led the players with his effort and energy around training. I just could tell that he was clouded in his thoughts, and Roger's the type of player, as are most, the clearer they are in their mind, the better they play. And there were some periods there where I just knew that he was always on the phone, and he just wasn't his bubbly, vibrant self at different times through the week. So, I couldn't do too much more than just talk to him, see how he's travelling. I know when he did his hamstring right at the very end, we offered him the opportunity to go home a few days earlier, and he knocked it back. He wanted to stay, and I just thought, wow, what a person, putting his team and his club and his teammates first, above his family. And he would have got home maybe 8 or 9 days earlier than the rest of us, but Christ, I don't know if I could have done that.
Yeah, that was awesome leadership for sure from the captain. The round 17 loss to Parramatta and the round 18 loss to Cronulla effectively ended our fairy tale ending of a finals appearance. But after that, how hard was it to keep the group focused with them effectively having a definite date to return to their families within 2 weeks?
Yep, it was pretty hard. It was hard not just for the players, but for the staff. You know, in terms of our post-game stuff, we didn't essentially do a formal review. Our first training session back is probably, it is our first chance to delve into what we're facing the following week in terms of sets and sequences and structure from a defensive point of view. We canned that training. No, didn't can the training session, but we just played games and tried to keep the guys upbeat and enjoying themselves. And then, you know, the decision around that was on the proviso that we would have to have a bigger day in our next session, cover off attack ND, and then put the icing on the cake with our captain's run. And I thought that worked pretty well. You know, I know the guys were buzzing after that first training day after a couple of tough defeats, you know, the disappointment of, you know, missing out on the finals, and they knuckled down. They made that commitment when we offered them that opportunity to you know, just relax a bit on that first session, but they knuckled down when they needed to and showed some real maturity and real professionalism. And yeah, we won that last game, played, you know, we didn't start great, but again, we just hung in there and scored some good tries and finished off, you know, the right way.
Yeah, because that round 19 game against Canberra, that could have, like, they could have been forgiven for putting in a lackluster performance and the score being a blowout, but they didn't. They turned up again. You know, they showed that resilience.
Yeah.
Kind of got to know this year.
Yeah,
but losing Roger during that match must have been very hard for him.
Yeah, it was. I was really nervous on that game, just knowing that we had been knocked out. You know, and it wasn't a traditional day of travel for us. So we were at Terrigal. We had an hour and a half bus to Sydney, and then we had a short flight, and then we had to get bus straight to the ground. And we literally had 2.5 hours before kickoff, because we were kicking off at 2 o'clock in the day. So we usually either kick off at 4 or 7 o'clock, which just gave us that little bit of a gap and a bit of breathing space to prepare as well as we could mentally and physically. But, you know, the early kickoff meant that we didn't have that breathing space, and, you know, our other option was to leave like at 6 a.m. and on game day, it was too difficult. So I was really nervous as a coach leading to that game. After 15, 20 minutes, I just knew the nerves were unwarranted. I don't know, I just probably lacked a little bit of faith at that time, but all the signs were good, and the players just hung in there and showed some real grit and resilience, which they had done for the last few months.
Yeah, you touched on the final round game before with the convincing win against Manly. And it's quite fitting that the team saved their two best performances of the season for the round 16 win at Tamworth against Newcastle. So to thank the community there, and the round 20 win against Manly to farewell the Central Coast fans. So describe your feelings watching those two performances, and were they two of the highlights of the season for you? Yeah,
the Newcastle game was by far, you know, the highlight and the best footy that we played, because we just played really mature, disciplined footy. You know, we didn't push things. We just stayed patient, and at the back end of the game, you know, we got the rewards. And again, we just played some classy footy and scored some really good tries. And there was a game that we built over the first 60 minutes. You know, that last game, again, was a good reward for everyone on the Central Coast. We've become part of the community there. I know I really enjoyed my time there. I got to know some people that, you know, would never really come across most of the time. And I know that the rest of the players felt right at home there because of the people in that town. So, yeah, it was just a good way to finish the season off. You know, really good way to cap off, you know, a tough and at times challenging, but in the end, a really enjoyable, memorable year.
Yeah. And that round 20 game was also farewelling one of the greatest Kiwi players of all time in Adam Blair.
Yep.
I feel fortunate I was there to watch that game, witness that, and all the on-field celebrations afterwards.
Yep.
How did Adam and the squad approach that week? I guess it would have been hard for Blairy, knowing that was the last time he was going to pull on the boots.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, I reckon it would have been, for Blairy, it would have been difficult knowing that was his last time, but that was just enough reason to get our guys going. They wanted to pay him the respect that he deserved by putting in their best performance and making it a memorable day for him. I know it was, I know for Jess and the boys, it was difficult at times for them being at Terrigal, but, man, he's a tremendous leader and footballer for our club, and the way I've seen him be a father and a leader amongst that group of men, mate, he's first class. Blair, he deserves every accolade he got. 300 games playing in the front row in the NRL is testament to his professionalism, determination, and his toughness.
Yeah, you spoke so highly of the guys in your final game press conference in the last round there. What will you miss most about the group?
Look, obviously where we were and how we were living, just the connection was amplified. So, I won't miss Jazz's cheekiness. But in saying that, every club needs one of him. He's like the social glue for everyone, and then what he provided on the park for us, a lot of it goes unseen. He does a lot of tough work. He plays big minutes. He plays well above his weight, and he doesn't take a backward step. So, it's a good question. I just thought they were a really respectful young group of men, and they wanted to get better, and they turn up every day, and we just enjoyed ourselves, and that's what I'm going to miss. Just them, just being there every day. But I'm in an environment now which is very similar. We're in a team environment. I'm very lucky of what we do or what I do. So trying to recreate that as best as we can.
The Warriors are certainly going to miss you. It's obvious that your coaching style and your man management really suited our current squad. And I know the Cowboys will benefit massively from having you as a head coach. I want to thank you for looking after our boy, Lockie Burr. Taking him up to the Cowboys with you. Lockie played junior footy at the club I was president of, and my mate Juan was his coach when he was a young kid. So he's a good kid. He's a good, hard young player, and we're happy he's found a home. We're happy you're looking after him.
Yep.
Rob's just going to ask you a couple of questions. I'm going to scroll the screen and check some fan questions for you.
Yeah, just got a couple of quick fire questions that I'll ask you about the 2020 squad. Who was the funniest player?
Oh, yeah, Jazz. I just like Jazz, the way he did things. He called a spade a spade. He had that little bit of streak of rat bag in him, and he was cheeky. I enjoyed him.
You probably answered the next one, but who was the biggest pest?
I thought Carl Lawton.
Oh, Carl
probably,
Lawton.
Top the list there. Mad Dog. Yeah, he's great too for the group. From a social aspect, bringing everyone together, making sure he's got the right attitude, really positive. But he also got that smart assness, that Aussie smart assness that can rub people the wrong way.
Yeah, right. Okay. Had a very good season though. Yeah.
Yeah, he did.
Best trainer.
Yeah. I would have to put Blairy up there. Roger, the two leaders of the club. Rog, he's such an athlete. Everything he does is fast. With Blairy, he gets the job done no matter how hard or how old he felt. And he just showed our younger guys both of them did, how to be professional on and off the field.
Okay, what about the worst trainer?
We had some young guys.
When we interviewed Jazz, he said it was Tohu.
Yeah, you're probably right. Yeah, you're right. He's bang on the money there. So I don't know how Tohu can be a professional rugby league player. He hates to train. He hates physical contact. You know, he doesn't like hanging around his teammates too often. But come 3 o'clock kick-off, mate, he's leading from the front. So, mate, he was a learning lesson for me, because it just reminded me that everyone's different, you know. And Tohu, great family man, very quiet, very reserved, just like being left alone. And in the environment that we were in, it probably stood out even more, you know, that he was just happy, just looking after himself and his family. And it was an eye opener. And I thought he did really well and played some great footy.
Right, we won't keep you too much longer, mate. Just a couple of fan questions. Who were your heroes growing up?
Yep. From a sporting perspective, or?
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah. I grew up supporting Parramatta, Peter Sterling, Ray Price, but then, I jumped ship to the Raiders when they were in their heyday just before I got there, and I looked up to Ruben for a long time. Brad Clyde, Laurie Daly from the next town over from me in Temora, so, I could name a lot of those guys. Rube's a great guy. We had, he took me under his wing when I was 16, 17, 18, and, learned a lot from him.
Well, you probably answered this one then. Who was the toughest teammate you played with?
Yeah, Rubes would be up there. Adrian Morley was another. I had 12 months at the Roosters. But Gareth Ellis, again, he was a pommy from the Tigers.
Tigers, yeah.
Mate, he was as hard as nails.
Still playing.
Pardon?
He's still playing.
Yeah, I think so. I don't know how, but he's still playing. And, even Brett Hodgson, he wasn't tough in the physical aspect of, dominating other teammates, but the punishment he would take at training and in games, that's a toughness that doesn't get the recognition that it should.
Yeah.
And from Gordon Tallis in Origin.
Speaking
of Ruben, did you ever drink kava with him?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes, copious amounts at different times when I was young and old.
Yeah.
And the most important question is, what do you do with all your Warriors gear now that you're not there? Because I'm a double XL or an XL.
You should have told me a few weeks ago, because I've given it all away. I'll have to send you some cowboy stuff. What do you think?
Yeah, you can do that. Yeah. We'll take it. Mate, I'll tell you now, as much as, it pains me to say, we've met. You've done great things for our club this year. I've got a soft spot for the Cowboys now, and I'll be rooting for them, just not when they're playing our Warriors.
Well, it's the same for the Warriors for me. Man, I'm so optimistic about what lies ahead for the club. I think they can use our last 12 months as a springboard, because I know the belief's there. They've got some really good signings. I'm really excited to see what they can produce this year. I think every supporter and member should be really excited about what's happening. Some great people, and the club deserves everything they get moving forward.
It's that thing, isn't it, mate? It's we've always had the talent. It's just that mental fortitude that we've never really been known for, and you really brought that out this year. And we're certainly hoping that Nathan Brown can build on that culture and resilience that you instilled in the squad this year. But mate, I just want to thank you for coming on, having a chat with us. Hoping you might do it again next year, even though you'll be the Cowboys coach. If we reach out to have another live chat, maybe you'll come on and speak to us about life up north.
Yeah, it depends how we go, how we're going. Yeah, anytime.
Yeah. Thanks, well, from me as well, for so much for chatting about us. We certainly hope that you'll look back on your time with the club with great memories.
Yep.
And we hope that you're not lost to the club forever. So who knows? You may be back one day, hopefully. I'll personally never forget your contribution to the club, and you'll be forever etched in Warriors folklore. And I just want to say thanks for giving the fans something to believe in. And can we ask, whatever you had going, can you bottle that and send it to Nathan Brown?
I think it's already there, mate.
Thanks, Todd. Really
it's already there. All right, no worries. Thanks for having me, guys.
No worries.
Thanks a lot, Todd.
No worries. See you later.
Thank you. Bye.